Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Russia sends drones into Polish airspace as NATO and the West respond. Trump reacts to Israel's targeted strike in Doha after several Hamas members and a Qatari security officer were killed. And the US president encourages the EU to place 100% tariffs on China and India, forcing economic pressure on Russia. President Trump says he's ready to hit China and India with tariffs of up to 100% to pressure Russian President Vladimir Putin to negotiate with Ukraine, but only if EU states follow suit. Trump made the demand during a meeting with senior US and EU officials working on ending the war. Patrick Falk reports.
Well, as we know, China and India are major buyers of Russian oil, and that's seen essentially as what's keeping the Russian economy afloat. The request Trump made, which was first reported in the Financial Times, follows remarks made by the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who said Washington is prepared to ramp up pressure on Moscow, but that it needed stronger European backing. It comes also after Trump's deadline for Putin to hold talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky passed without any indication the Russian leader was genuinely interested in any sort of peace talks. But the messaging was somewhat confused by social media posts made later on the same day saying that the US and India were continuing negotiations to try and address trade barriers, and Trump expressed optimism the two sides could resolve their dispute. Washington has already doubled tariffs on Indian exports to 50% over its purchases of Russian oil. So it makes you wonder whether there's some sort of broader strategy on how Trump deals with New Delhi, or whether he might have been backtracking on potentially damaging comments. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, for his part, wrote on social media that he was confident about unlocking the limitless potential of the India-US partnership. The tariff proposal also contrasts with a softer tone Trump has taken with China. As we know, he is keen to secure a summit, in particular with President Xi Jinping. Beijing would likely retaliate, though, against any escalation, and any measures on China risks destabilizing China's supply of magnets, crucial for American manufacturing.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Protesters in France have kicked off Block Everything demonstrations, blocking highways and causing massive traffic jams. Dozens have already been arrested, and officials say more unrest could follow. The movement has been compared to the Yellow Vest protests as anger over President Emmanuel Macron's leadership continues to build. Staying with France, President Emmanuel Macron has appointed his close ally Sébastien Lecornu just one day after François Bayrou was forced out in a failed confidence vote. At the age of 39, Lecornu becomes Macron's seventh prime minister, tasked with tackling France's massive debt and pushing through a budget despite fierce opposition. For the first time, more children around the world are obese than underweight, according to UNICEF. 1 in 10 children between the ages of 5 and 19, approximately 188 million, are now living with obesity as diets shift towards ultra-processed foods. UNICEF is urging governments to step in and protect children's health from the food industry's influence. Australian scientists have developed a chlamydia vaccine for koalas, aiming to curb a disease that kills up to half of wild populations. The single-dose shot can protect koalas from infections that cause blindness, infertility and death. Researchers hope it will cut wild koala deaths by at least 65%. Let's take a quick look at the top business news now. Oil prices have risen today following Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. Brent crude futures rose 56 cents, while WTI crude gained 0.9%. Meanwhile, the US is pushing for new sanctions on Russian oil buyers, but worries about oversupply limited further gains. Manufacturers of weight loss drug Wegovy plan to cut 9,000 jobs in order to save $1.3 billion annually. Wegovy and Ozempic are losing market share as sales decline in the US. Novo Nordisk said around 5,000 of the cuts will take place in Denmark. Now, Poland says it shot down 4 Russian drones, marking the first time strikes have entered NATO territory during the war with Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister claims Putin is attempting to test the West, whilst Poland's prime minister admits his country is at its closest to open conflict since World War II. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte condemned Moscow's actions and sent a warning to Vladimir Putin. Take a listen.
The full assessment is ongoing. And to Putin, I mean, my message is clear. Stop the war in Ukraine. Stop the escalating war, which he is now basically mounting on innocent civilians and civilian infrastructure. Stop violating Allied airspace. And know that we stand ready, that we are vigilant, and that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
We can now speak to former US ambassador to the United States and former national security advisor under President Donald Trump, John Bolton. John, an absolute pleasure for you to join us on the show this evening. Thank you so much. I just want to get your reaction to some breaking news that we are hearing. We are hearing that Charlie Kirk has been shot at a rally in Utah. I don't know what your reaction is to this breaking news.
Well, it's very disturbing. I mean, this is unacceptable. I can't imagine what could have motivated somebody to do this. We can only hope that that it's not a serious wound, but we don't really have any more information than that. Unfortunately, this is just not something that should happen.
Yes, John, as we're hearing from Fox News, his condition is unknown at the moment, and more on that throughout the show this evening. John, thanks so much for reacting to that. But just if we go back to some of the news we were talking about earlier, in a post on Truth Social, President Trump has said, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." What can we expect to see from President Donald Trump in the coming days or hours? And will this rhetoric now be concerning Vladimir Putin?
Well, I'm not quite sure what Trump means by that. I mean, he has said that he wanted to solve the Ukraine war because he thought it could lead to World War III, and that may be what he's reflecting. I mean, I think this is clearly the moment that should have come before, that to say to the Russians, we don't accept this kind of behavior. I find it very hard to believe that 19 drones penetrating Polish airspace over an extended period of time was simply poorly targeted drones, the rest aimed at Ukraine. I think this could very well be a Russian effort to see how much resolve NATO has. So I think it calls for some very strong sanctions. I think it should reinforce what I think many NATO members already believe, that Putin, after the Anchorage summit, thought he had a free hand. He was disregarding what NATO was saying and our determination to make sure that the Russian aggression in Ukraine doesn't prevail. So this is a new and additional reason, but I think it underlines what should be NATO's basic strategy, which is not to accept unprovoked aggression from Russia or anybody else.
And it's really interesting because Warsaw has asked to invoke NATO Article 4. This is not a military response, John. Do you think this response is just far too weak? And does NATO need to do more now in the face of Russian aggression?
Well, invoking Article 4 means that a country thinks its independence or national security is threatened, which I think is clearly the case here. The rhetoric that I've heard from Polish leaders indicates they think it was deliberate. And so the first thing you'd want to do with NATO allies is consult and make sure people are reading it the same way. The next logical step after that could be Article 5 and the use of military force. But at an absolute minimum, this shows why the sanctions against Russia not only need to be tightened and extended, they need to be enforced better. We've had 3.5 years of going on 4 years now of this war where honestly Russia's been able to evade the sanctions. I think many of the sanctions have been poorly written, poorly drafted, trying to achieve contradictory objectives. But there's at an absolute minimum, this has got to result in a vastly extended economic pressure on Russia, just for starters.
Okay, so 3 weeks ago, President Donald Trump hosted President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. The red carpet was rolled out. But since then, nothing has changed when it comes to Russia's actions. Some people would argue they've actually become even more violent and more provocative since. Now, what has gone so wrong in the relationship between President Trump and President Putin? And what does the US now need to do to get President Putin to actually stop?
Well, I think Trump misread the relationship with Putin from the get-go. He thought he and Putin were friends. I don't think Putin ever thought that. I think he knows exactly what he thinks Russia's national interests are, and he has for many years used his KGB training to manipulate Trump, and I think he manipulated him in Alaska. We walked away from that summit with Russia having made no concessions, and the U.S. and Europe scrambling around to figure out what a response was. We've seen Russia's response over the past several days: more attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine, and now this incursion into Polish airspace. So I don't think we need to worry about getting the Putin-Trump relationship back on track. I don't think there ever was a relationship there. I think Trump made a big mistake. Now's the time to correct it.
And when we have a look at the sanctions that have been threatened on Russia, Donald Trump hasn't put any economic sanctions on Russia. Yes, he's put sanctions on India for buying Russian oil. Do you think that the tactic needs to change now?
Yes, the pressure needs to be on Russia. You know, India, nobody appreciates India buying the oil, but they did not violate the sanctions. They apparently purchased the oil under the price cap that was a reflection of the contradictory objectives of the sanctions: deny Russia funding for the war in Ukraine, but don't limit global supply of oil for fear that it would increase price of gasoline at the pump in the U.S. and Europe. And this contradiction in the objectives of the sanctions allowed India, China, Pakistan, Turkey, many countries to buy Russian oil and use it. And much of the oil that Indian companies bought, they sold on to Europe, of all places, who are now complaining about it. So rather than pick on India, let's go after what the real problem here is, which is Russia, and abandon this idea of a price cap and just say we're not going to accept any export of oil or gas from Russia. This is a time to put maximum pressure on the Russian economy and hope that if it doesn't bring Putin to his senses, brings other Russians to their senses, and they find a way to stop this aggression.
And if we move on to Israel strikes in Qatar, Trump has said he's not thrilled after Israel's airstrike in Doha yesterday. Qatar, John, as we know, has been central to mediation ceasefire discussions. How damaging is this strike to Trump's pursuit for peace in the Middle East and also for his credibility on an international stage?
Well, I think there's not going to be peace with Hamas and Israel. I don't see that happening. I didn't see it happening before this strike in Doha. I think the real problem here remains Iran. I think that is the leader of this ring of fire strategy against Israel, and that's where we should all be focusing our attention. I don't think it's ever good for the United States to have one of its allies use military force against the country of another. On the other hand, I think if we had thought we could find Osama bin Laden and the terrorists who created the 9/11 attack, we'd have probably attacked them wherever we found them.
And John, also, just another topic I want to touch on with you is all about the Epstein files. There seems to be a leaking, dripping tap that just isn't being escaped by Donald Trump's administration. And of course, we saw the release of the birthday book, of Epstein's birthday book, including a sketch and note allegedly written by President Donald Trump. Are you at all surprised by this list? And what are the political ramifications on the Trump administration right now? And how on earth do they handle this political fallout?
Well, you know, the scandal surrounding Jeffrey Epstein is a result of the terrible crimes that he and some of his associates committed. And I think the victims of these crimes have been in Washington recently and have made a very real impact on members of Congress who have been saying we need to get to the bottom of this. That's what Trump himself said up until a couple of months ago, when inexplicably he began to say, we're not going to release the Epstein files. It's all fake news. It's made up. You know, for a president who said he wanted to be transparent, and as to whom there's no evidence I'm aware of that he engaged in any of these heinous crimes that Epstein and his other associates committed. So the inexplicable part here is why Donald Trump doesn't want to release more of the information the Justice Department has and other information that could shed light on who else may have participated in this terrible activity. And that's what's causing him political trouble with his base. It's his own apparent reversal on the transparency he originally called for. So if Trump wants to end the political pain, it's really pretty simple for him to do. And why he's not doing it, I don't know of anybody who has a good explanation for it.
And John, just before I do let you go, recently the FBI raided your home and they also raided your office. Many items were seized during these raids, like iPads, laptops, USB drives. The FBI is now actively reviewing the seized material. Do the seized material that they have contain classified documents, John? And are you likely to do jail time?
Well, as you can understand, I'm not going to answer any of those questions. I'm really not in a position to do that now. I'd love to talk about it, but this is not the time or the place.
Okay, John, thank you so much for joining us. John Bolton there. A pleasure to have your insights. Now, US President Donald Trump says he's not thrilled after Israel carried out an airstrike in Doha, targeting Hamas leaders and killing at least 6 people, including one Qatari security officer. The attack has been condemned by Qatar and the UN, while Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it fully justified. Defense Minister Israel Katz has said Israel will target enemies wherever they are. Qatar is now looking into whether Netanyahu should be held responsible for the strikes. To discuss this and some of today's other stories, I'm joined by correspondent and columnist Gemma White, who's in the studio with me, and correspondent Sara Firth, who is joining us from Washington. Sara and Gemma, great to have you both on the show. So, Sara, I just want to react to some breaking news that we are just having through, just quickly to see if you have any reaction for us. But we are hearing that Charlie Kirk has been shot at a campus event in Utah. And Donald Trump is saying that we need to pray for Charlie Kirk and we must reject political violence as politicians react to the shooting. Do we have any information?
Yes, Leigh-Ann, this is a pretty major developing story here in the US. Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old right-wing activist, he was giving a talk at Utah Valley University. There's video circulating online. You can hear a shot. You see Charlie Kirk recoiling and there's blood coming from his neck. It's really quite graphic viewing. We're being told by authorities that he has been taken from the campus by his security team, taken to get medical treatment. We're also hearing that they have got a suspect in custody. That is according to an alert that the university has put out to students. As you said, Leigh-Ann, the president has reacted to this. Charlie Kirk is a well-known right-wing activist here in the United States. He's a big name, and he's a very well-known supporter of President Trump. President Trump calling him a good guy, saying that we must pray for him. You've got an outpouring of reaction from shocked elected officials all across the board, Republicans and Democrats. The Democratic governor for California, Governor Newsom, he has called the attack vile and reprehensible. You've had the Vice President, J.D. Vance, also saying this is a father, he's a good guy, and reiterating the president's calls for those prayers. This is a developing story. The FBI say they are closely monitoring reports of that shooting. That is according to FBI Director Kash Patel. Leigh-Ann, just shockwaves across the board here tonight in the US with news of that shooting breaking.
Yes, indeed. And also shock at the White House as the news breaks, as we see the reaction coming out of that. And of course, Charlie Kirk has very, very many followers on YouTube and is extremely popular. Sarah, thank you so much for bringing us that breaking news. Let's just go to another topic, Sarah, that we have been discussing today. And we're actually learning from a few other things. What are we learning from Washington about how much advance notice the Trump administration was really given before Israel struck Hamas targets in Doha yesterday?
Well, Leigh-Ann, the messaging from the White House has been that it was very late in the day that the president was informed. There's been a real picture emerging throughout the day. I know we've spoken about it as we've reported this story of really a very strained information chain. So the messaging that's come out is that there was advance notice, but very, very late in the process, and not through the usual channels, not through the top political channels, but rather this time through military channels. By the time the Pentagon had informed President Trump, and President Trump had ordered his envoy, Steve Witkoff, to pass on the message to the Qataris, we're being told that the bombs had already started falling. We've heard the Qatari officials come out and say it was 10 minutes after those explosions had been heard, so too late to simply do anything about it. It has caused a diplomatic chaos, really, as the situation has unfolded, with the repercussions still, Leigh-Ann, at this point in the process, pretty unknown. The fallout could be significant. Qatar is the home to one of the largest US air bases, the largest US air base in the region. There is absolutely furious Qatari officials that have come out calling this 100% treacherous, and the questions are, why didn't the president know sooner? Why wasn't he able to do more to prevent this? Now, the White House and President Trump himself, he's describing very unhappy with the actions that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took. But that language simply isn't cutting it. It's seen more of a sort of slap on the wrist rather than out-and-out disapproval of those actions. And given the critical nature of the relationship that the US has with Qatar, Qatar have been at the forefront of spearheading the efforts to come up with some kind of brokered peace agreement that the US has on the table for the conflict in Gaza. And all of that now looks in jeopardy with these Israeli attacks. And President Trump, his credibility being questioned today, not just amongst his adversaries, but in the White House too. I can tell you, Leigh-Ann, there is a lot of frustration being expressed, and some of that frustration starting to be made more and more public now.
And Gemma, let's just touch on the fallout in the region, because as Sarah just spoke to us of the fallout in the US and the criticism there, but the fallout in the region, in the Middle East, where we are, Trump is now in this complex diplomatic situation, especially with the UAE and Saudi condemning what's happened.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed has visited Qatar, and then delegations from Saudi are going to go later this week as well. So The fallout is complex, and it seems to be getting bigger and bigger. This isn't something that's going to go away. Now, Qatari officials have said they're putting together a legal team. They are going to, they want to take this to sort of the highest courts that they can. They've delivered separate statements to the United Nations Human Rights Council and the UN Security Council, calling the attack a blatant violation of all international laws and norms. And there was obviously an emergency session called by the UN Security Council in order to, deal with this situation. Now, there's a series of likely outcomes which will affect the diplomatic landscape. Firstly, Qatar is likely to feel betrayed right now. They are one of the US's strongest allies in the region. They could see this and are likely to see this as a betrayal, especially after years and years of working together. And not just in the region, they have worked to further US interest globally as well. Secondly, as Sarah said, this may cause Qatar to pull out of further negotiations. They won't host anymore. They won't offer their assistance anymore, which would be a great loss to the process. Thirdly, this could end the potential for any further negotiations, which many have alluded to. Perhaps that was Netanyahu's aim all along, to just cast out this negotiation process. And fourthly, the focus has now shifted to other US allies in the region. In particular, Egypt has been quite vocal in the media about saying if they take in Hamas leaders in exile in Cairo, could they be next on the list?
And these are the questions that so many people need answers to at the moment. Gemma and Sarah, thank you for your thoughts on that story. Let's move on. And for the first time, more children around the world are obese and underweight, according to UNICEF. 1 in 10 children between the ages of 5 and 19, approximately 188 million, are now living with obesity as diets shift towards ultra-processed foods. Gemma, let's start with you on this story. Why has this happened for the first time? What's actually changed significantly?
I mean, this, as you say, this is the first time this has happened. The study found that 391 million children across the globe are overweight, and of that amount, 188 million are considered obese. So that's 1 in 10 children between the ages of 5 and 19. And obesity now exceeds underweight in all regions of the world except sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Now, I think what I've found interesting as well is it's causing health experts to redefine what malnourished means. Now, malnourished used to mean that you weren't getting enough food, you'd probably be very, very thin. But now malnourished can mean that you are obese and you're not getting any nutrients from the food that you're eating.
And that's something I never actually thought about in reality, because that's fascinating. So basically people are just eating this food that's got nothing to it, but they're still putting on weight.
Absolutely.
But essentially they're really malnourished and unhealthy.
Exactly, just empty calories. Now, the main blame is on the fact that traditional diet has gone out the window. People aren't cooking at home anymore. And obviously ultra-processed foods are super cheap and super convenient. A family who's been at work all day are more likely to grab something to feed their family than go home and then spend hours cooking from scratch. Society has changed and times have changed. But also, I think it is a lot to do with money, a lot to do with cost, and a lot to do with time constraints.
And I think it's all of those things. If you look at it from a whole, it's very difficult, isn't it, to cook a good meal from scratch and have the time to do that if you are a busy family. And Sarah, do we need to see more aggressive marketing restrictions on ultra-processed foods going forward? Because Gemma just outlined why it's so difficult in many respects for people to eat healthily.
So difficult, and the reasons behind that so varied. And as you and Gemma were talking about then, the blame can be pointed in various directions. But UNICEF are pretty clear that yes, when it comes to the marketing around some of these very high-calorie, ultra-processed foods, that there does need to be targeted intervention. And this is really governments around the world, not just low-income countries, high-income countries as well. Here in the United States, I think it's 21% of 5 to 19-year-olds who are now considered obese, 27% considered obese in Chile. So what the UNICEF charity are calling for is a targeted intervention by governments around the world. They are saying that they need nutritious and affordable food, the diets of young children to be available to children, for those children's diets to be protected. They've also said that there needs to be policies that support the parents and caretakers. So touching on what you were both talking about there, which is that, when it comes to that sort of first line of defence, it does tend to fall to the parents. And why is it that so many children, it seems, are simply slipping through the net? I mean, here in the United States, the marketing around these ultra-processed products is just off the charts. It's absolutely everywhere. And even when you're sort of informed about updates like this one from UNICEF and those warnings that are out there, it's very easy to not have that information at your fingertips, to ignore the information. It's a super size me kind of culture here in the United States. Interestingly, guys, there was a teenager in Pennsylvania last year, 2024, who tried to sue major food companies. He claimed ultra-processed food had caused him to develop type 2 diabetes. Now, ultimately, the judge dismissed that case. There were simply too many foods that he'd named. It was too vague, too many companies involved. But it is an interesting question that's clearly coming up more and more as this problem grows as to, how much responsibility do these ultra-processed fast food companies have when it comes to children's health, and this UNICEF report clearly pointing to the fact that there's quite a lot of responsibility.
But something, I think you made a good point there, Sarah. She said this first line of defence, it's the parents, it's the education at home, and that's something that needs to be instilled in families. But also governments, like the British government, they put a sugar tax on sugary drinks. That did nothing. It caused outrage with the companies and also with people buying them. They put on the colour codes to say how much fat and sugar were in certain foods. They have tried to remove advertising early in the day for sugary drinks to try to get kids not involved. But are parents not doing enough? Is it what's happening here?
There is only so much that governments can do. Yeah. They are not on the front line. They're not in the household providing the food and cooking. I do also wonder, there is so much information about diet and nutrition out there that it can be overwhelming. I do think a lot of people would just like to start from scratch, sort of be given some basics, but we have moved away from the home cooking. But I do agree with you. I do believe that parents are at ground zero for this. They need to take responsibility, and if they feel they're not educated or they don't know enough, they need to educate themselves, because there is plenty of information out there.
And that's a really great point. And like we were saying earlier, governments have tried and tried all different techniques, and I've seen them throughout the years in the supermarkets, and it doesn't seem to be making a difference. No. But thank you, Sarah and Gemma, for your thoughts on that. Let's move on to another story. And in the last couple of hours, Prince Harry has met King Charles for a private tea at Clarence House in London. It's believed to be their first meeting in more than a year. Gemma, let's start with you, because recently, when did we discuss this? We said, would Harry go and yes, this is recent, isn't it? And now he's done it. So I don't know what you think, but speculation, we've spoken about speculation on the show, but the speculations come true. They've met.
I mean, it was kind of signalled back in July when we had the meeting of the King's press secretary, and
which was meant to be secret, but it was
exactly Harry and Meghan's spokesperson. It was supposed to be a very secret meeting, but it was done in a very public place. So you make of that what you will. But yeah, so it's been 19 months since they last met, and again, this meeting was done publicly. Harry was driven through the gates of Clarence House, which is Charles's residence in London, in front of everyone, everyone could see this. They want everyone to see that this is happening. Now, they haven't seen each other since February 2024, and that was just after King Charles had announced publicly that he had cancer. Now, I do think this meeting is going to start causing a lot of conspiracy theories as to, why now? Why is Harry meeting his dad now? And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing headlines, Charles doesn't have long to live, or a lot of speculation around that, because they'll need to sort of find a reason why Harry is meeting him now. I do think this has been months in the making, probably a lot of back and forth, a lot of negotiations, because Charles came down from Balmoral and obviously Harry had flown over on some charity work. This has been, you know, choreographed down to the nth degree. I do not think we will ever see a reconciliation with William. I think too much bad blood has passed there. But I do think, you know, royal watchers and fans will like seeing this, Harry at least being brought back into the fold.
And I do agree with that. Harry coming back home after so many years away. But it's such, Sarah, let's say this is a positive step in their relationship, but it's been so strange since Harry moved back to America. We've seen him write the book Spare, which had some really nasty, controversial comments in it about the royal family. We saw him do Oprah. We saw him do the Netflix show. So, well, I don't know what to make of all of it, to be honest.
I know, poor Harry. I mean, congratulations, guys, on getting those royal scoops predicted so far ahead of time. But yes, it's kind of a sweet story. I think that finally, you know, Harry has openly expressed in pretty recent months that he would love a reconciliation with his family. You know, there's reports that come out quite often from friends saying that he's homesick here. Yeah, I can sympathise with that. You know, I do miss Britain for all its grey and rainy days. Here in the US, you know, it is a different world. And he is very far apart from his family. And as you and Gemma were just talking about, what is it, 19 months apart since he'd seen his father and his father facing those health issues. So I think given that Harry's sort of been so vocal about wanting this reconciliation with his family, it's lovely to see that the meeting has now happened. I mean, the question, of course, is whether that leads to a longer-term reconciliation. And as Gemma was saying, you know, Harry himself has acknowledged in interviews that some of the damage done is probably too deep to ever truly perhaps be forgiven with those interviews, with some of the accusations made against the royal family. But he's back on British soil. He is meeting his father. He's seen his father. And another question that will be on everyone's lips, I'm sure, back home, particularly behind palace doors, is when he gets back here to the US, are we going to see some of that information as to what happened behind closed doors potentially leaked to the press? Because that's the real sticking point, isn't it, guys? That it seems every time there's some kind of interaction with the royal family that there's then a load of headlines, accusations of leaking. So I think that's going to be a pretty big test moving forward on the back of this meeting.
And Gemma, I agree with that. That is the big concern. Harry comes, holds a conversation with his father. His father's obviously been extremely unwell, and I'm sure he's absolutely thrilled to have his younger son. But I think if leaks do start appearing in certain pages of US papers and magazines, it's not going to be a good look.
No, and they're not going to be above planting certain stories, you know, having certain conversations to see if they appear, you know. These are people who have been dealing with the press since they were born. They know how to play every single game with the media. They all have their sources that they speak to in particular. So, yeah, I mean, if we do see these leaks coming out, who knows what will happen after that?
I'm sure we'll talk about them on the show.
Sure
but thank you so much for your thoughts on that, Sarah and Gemma. And it's a time of the show where Gemma and Sarah have chosen two of their quirkiest stories of the day. And Gemma, yours is about a burger. And it costs a lot of money.
A burger from an unexpected place.
Yes, a burger from an unexpected place. It costs £11.
Yes, that's 15 US dollars.
15 US dollars for the burger. Why so much? What can we talk about? What can we say? Why so much excitement about the burger?
You would think a burger this expensive is coming from, you know, a high-end restaurant. This is not. This is Burger King's
Go on, Burger King.
new Wagyu burger.
Burger King are going elite.
Exactly. Burger King are going for a Michelin star, I think. Now, just for context, so the burger is £11. You can buy 2 Whopper meals for around £11. So it is very different to their current, price range. Now, they've launched it. It's the most expensive menu item they've ever launched. They've only launched it in the UK, and they've roped in Gordon Ramsay, obviously famous Michelin-starred chef, to be the face of it. But what their whole tagline is, no, Gordon didn't have anything to do with this, so that's quite funny. Now, it sounds delicious when you do describe it. It's got caramelised onions, pink pickled onions, rocket, not lettuce this time, rocket.
Very
so we're
fancy.
Posher, yep, crispy onions and caramelised onion mayo served in a brioche. And it's served in this black box as well, which kind of, adds a bit of ceremony to it.
And a bit of mystery.
A little bit of mystery, yes. And the taste tests, which I've been reading, have actually been quite positive. But you have to wonder who they're aiming for. Burger King is traditionally something that you grab on the way to somewhere. You don't go in and sit down, tuck a napkin in and tuck into your Wagyu burger. So, yeah, you've got to wonder, is it a bit of a gimmick or is it something they want to start introducing on the menu?
Surely they must have done their market research before releasing an elite burger. But Sarah, you're over in the US. $15, did you say the burger was?
Yes.
$15 for a burger, is that acceptable?
Oh, honestly, Leigh-Ann, I'd have to try it. I was just going to say, I think we need an Al Arabiya taste testing of this story. We can all have a bite and then decide whether we think it's worth the cash.
But I find it absolutely fascinating because Burger King, always known for their meal deals and it's very cheap. Let's see how it goes. But I do like the idea of some restaurants.
I mean, what next? Truffle fries? Is that going to accompany? Because that would be delicious.
That would be really good too.
Yeah.
I would eat those because I'm vegan. I wouldn't have the burger, but I would have the truffle fries. Heads up, Burger King. If you need us to be in the advert, we are free. And
We're free and available.
yeah, all 3 of us. And Sarah, moving on to another story. Yours is about a military UFO hearing, which is going on in Congress. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Give us a little bit more info on it.
Yes, I mean, the video is pretty weird. This was shown in Congress, and it shows an orb, a glowing orb, being picked up on camera by one of the US's Reaper drones. Another drone then fires a Hellfire missile at it, and the missile, Leigh-Ann, just bounces off the orb, and the orb keeps on going. It's a very, very strange video. What's even weirder is that you had these members of Congress, lawmakers watching this, and then they had service members from the US military there to comment on the video and answer questions. And at one point, one lawmaker asked some of these service members, is there anything in America's arsenal, weapons arsenal, that they know of that would be able to deflect a missile the way that this orb seemed to? It just sort of bounced off. And the service members answered no unanimously. And then they were asked, does that scare you? And again, unanimously, they all answered yes. So this is video that was given to one of the members of Congress. The Department of Defense has not given an official explanation when they've been asked about this. We're going to continue to ask. But yes, this unidentified flying objects this video being shown in Congress, very well-respected service members are saying freaks them out, frankly.
Does it freak you out, Gemma? And I wonder, we see that video there right now.
Yeah.
I hope that, will we ever get an answer?
I mean, it doesn't freak me out at all. I think we live in an infinite universe, and the idea that we are alone, I think, is absurd, to be honest with you.
I believe they're among us.
Yes, I mean, but seeing this footage is fascinating. And I think, as Sarah says, when you have seasoned members of the forces who are giving you all their expertise and saying, no, there is nothing that can withstand a missile strike in that way. And do you find that scary? They're giving their expert opinion, and I think that just adds so much weight, and especially, where the hearing is as well.
And I also read that a movie director, a very famous movie director, has been seen at these hearings, and people are now speculating that a film could possibly be on its way, and there might be a lot more to come of this. And I love that idea.
I do. I love an alien film. You know, from Independence Day to Signs, I'll go and see that film. So yes,
I would too. Yourself, Sarah, you're up for the film if it comes out?
Yeah, absolutely. The truth is out there, Leigh-Ann and Gemma, and I quite like your philosophical, you know, we do live in an infinite universe, so who knows, but I would certainly be tuning into that movie, that's for sure.
And thanks so much for your thoughts on that. But Sarah, actually, before we let you go, we've actually got some more breaking news. Right-wing youth activist Charlie Kirk, a major ally of President Trump, has been shot at an event, as we mentioned earlier, and that event is taking place in Utah. Have we had any update on his condition or the situation?
Yes, Leigh-Ann, it is very much a developing story here in the US. You've had the president himself commenting on this very shocking shooting. There's video that's been circulating online. We know that he was shot in the neck while he was seated at this talk that he was giving at the university. Eyewitnesses saw him fall from his chair. The university has been evacuated, and we are told that the shooter is in custody at this point. The FBI is looking into this. Very, very shocking events. You're getting an absolute outpouring, Leigh-Ann, here this evening from lawmakers across the aisles, Republicans and Democrats, absolutely horrified by what's happened. As we said, that very, very shocking video emerging online. Charlie Kirk, 31-year-old right-wing activist, father of two, elected officials, the president himself calling tonight for prayers for Charlie. His condition at this point remains unknown, but a very, very shocking incident and a developing story that, of course, will be keeping viewers across.
And as you said, Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance are urging people to say prayers for Charlie Kirk. And that is the developing story that's happening there. And I just want to say thank you so much to our guest today, Correspondent Sara Firth, who was in Washington for us, and correspondent, columnist, and... Did I get that wrong? Sorry. No. Did I get it right? Gemma White, correspondent and columnist Gemma White. I just wanted to say, and that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, follow us on X. GNT with Michal Prendergast is coming up next. Goodbye, and thank you so much for joining us.